Okay, good morning, all. I was informed there's going to be no introduction. So, for those of you who may not know me, my name is Alan Costal, and I'm your resident Lincoln lawyer with Kim. And with me on the panel today is someone you probably all know, and that's Nancy Bush, who's our outside counsel and longtime counsel. So, I find it always interesting that maybe it's just been my experience, but when I'm ever I'm asked to speak on a panel and they find a time slot for the lawyers, our topic for the day is legally speaking, and we're going to talk about work and workers. But it's interesting that I generally get the time slot that's either right after lunch, which means it's nap time for everyone, or I get to follow the motivational speaker. So, and you all just got done applauding Rocky, so I guess this is guaranteed to be a letdown. So anyway, I hope that's not the case. I hope this is somewhat interactive. We have 20 minutes or so, which I think is by design. They want to keep the lawyers' speaking engagement limited. I'm usually at about my first or second breath about 20 minutes in. But anyway, we're going to talk work and workers. We're going to talk about two trending topics that have consumed much of our time over the last 10 to 11 months. And those are COVID compliance and wage and hour compliance. And we're going to start, if you will, by talking about COVID compliance. And here's where I'm going to, since I have to follow Rocky, I'm going to try and make this as interesting and pleasant for you all as I can. So in talking about legally speaking and talking about law, law is words, right? So I'm going to use literature to help a little bit here. And I'm going to use a couple quotes. And the first one is, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. And since you all are fact checkers out there, I'm sure, anyone recall where that might come from? In the interest of time, I'll help out. And it's Charles Dickens from 1859, A Tale of Two Cities. And I think it just struck me as very applicable to our situation here, especially talking about COVID, where it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. And here's where I want to take a minute and applaud all of you from leadership from top to bottom for what you've done and how you've let me help you over the last 10 to 11 months with virtually everything COVID related. Because use the quote, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. I believe Lincoln has shown me and the world that we've been our best at arguably the worst. And here's why I say that is that, let's quickly go through what we've experienced and what we've done. Here's how I phrase it is we've been proactive when we needed to be proactive, and we've been reactive when we've needed to be reactive. Case in point, the CDC just yesterday afternoon, once again, changed the definition of what close contact happens to be. We can talk about that if we have enough time, but just yesterday. So this is real-time stuff. This is not static. This is real time, it's live. So we've been proactive, we've been reactive, we've been flexible, we've been adaptable. We've endured, we've adapted, we've thrived, as you all know. And the biggest thing I want to applaud us all, and this is piggybacking and following up what Duncan and Tim shared with us yesterday, for those of you who are on that hour call, we've maintained virtually 100% of our workforce. You need to be very proud about that. You should be, because as Nancy can tell you from other clients, as you've been reading the papers or listening to the news about other companies out there, we're one of the few, and we should be proud about it because others have not been able to do that. So, and through that process, we've safe-proofed our workers and our residents. It's not just us, it's a team effort here. We've closed offices early in the spring when we had to. We went to staggered schedules, and we proved that we could work from home. We've reopened slowly, gradually. Again, on staggered schedules, we've accommodated workers through that process. And I'm going to throw it to Nancy to let her talk about that in a minute. And we've adapted to what I call Spike 3. And if my microphone is not muddled, that's Spike 3, not Spike Lee. It's because in the fall and right now, every day we're getting 60,000 new cases. So this is wave 3, if you will, of the COVID cases, positive cases. So, and in doing that, we've gone this week alone, to daily screening of our employees, right? So, and here's where I want to back up and use another quote, if you will. And if you've heard the expression, I'll start with the expression that art imitates life. Anyone out there heard something like that? It actually, again, I'm hesitant to use these things because of all the fact checkers among us. The actual quote is, life imitates art far more than art imitates life. And this does seem old because this is Oscar Wilde from 1889. But to use the shorter expression of it, that art imitates life, in my experience, and I think Nancy will share this, law reacts to life. So if art imitates life, law reacts to life. Can you all think of an immediate notion of what I mean by that, of law reacting to life in the COVID life right now? Again, I'd let you all answer because I usually like audience participation, but in the interest of time, you've already talked about it. It's been on the program earlier this week, the CDC no eviction moratorium. That didn't happen last year, right? That happened last month. That's law reacting to life. It's one of the CARES Act earlier on, the PPP, the loan program. All of these happened in our lifetime in the last 10 months. That's law reacting to life. And it's a judgment call, yours, mine, or somebody else's, as to whether that was the right reaction, the wrong reaction, or somewhere in between. But law reacts to life, and we've reacted to that. And here's what I say is, when I say, so if law reacts to life, our policies, our practices, our procedures react to life as well, react to the law that's reacting to life. Here's what we've done, if you don't know. So I generally try and say this because a lot of times we have all these policies, and we're not the only ones, every company has them, but they're not abstract notions, right? Even the laws themselves, they have strange titles. Some are acronyms, like FLSA stands for Fair Labor Standards Act, right? FMLA stands for Forgive My Last Absence, right? Wait, it's Family Medical Leave Act is what it really stands for. It just feels like the other sometimes, but they're not abstract notions. If we had more time, we could go through the history of where these came from, right? But our policies, and the only abstract about them to me is our numbers seem kind of random. But here's what we've done in the last 10 months. And that is, we started with our pandemic illness policy back in January, I think, when this first started. We had a policy, it's been in place, but we had to dust it off and revise it to freshen it to allow for the nuances and the changes and relative to COVID, something different, a pandemic, if you will, but the policy wasn't accurate enough, timely enough to be responsive to it. So we started there and followed after that with our maintenance policy to make it COVID compliant, COVID related. And we're on weekly calls with our RMDs, making sure that our workers are safe in the environments. We followed that with something we didn't have to do, our COVID isolation quarantine pay. We put that together because if you remember, the CARES Act, which was enacted early on, applied to smaller businesses than ourselves, under 5,000 employees, which provided some financial relief. Lincoln Property did that where we didn't have to do it because it was the right thing to do. So we created that isolation quarantine pay. Then we revised as we closed and figured out the work from home. We started reopening because we're an essential business, right? Especially at the property levels. We're an essential business. We needed to be open. We needed to be open for our residents. So how do we do that safely and protectedly? So we put together, revised 856 is our office reopening. Then our regional offices and our home offices, 858. Then we figured out, after working so hard all these months, no one's taking vacations. So what do we do with vacations? Again, something that we didn't have to do, but we adjusted our vacation policy to allow for a carryover of some vacation hours. And then more recently, starting this week, we implemented our daily health screening, daily COVID checklist for our employees coming in. Again, adapting and embracing what continues to happen in our lifetime. I started saying I've quick to some of our folks, if some of you are old enough to remember Gilligan's Island, or or the maybe you're watching it on streaming it somehow. But if you remember the theme song, it said what? A 3-hour tour. Well, we thought this was maybe 3 weeks, then maybe 3 months, and now we're like 9 months, 10 months. I'm losing track of time, and it's not over yet, right? So we continue to adapt. We continue to adjust. We continue to be proactive. We continue to be reactive. But let me stop talking and throw it to Nancy to let her talk about what we've done in the accommodation space relative to working from home. Nancy?
Hi, everyone. I so wish I could see you. I can't see anybody. I actually wish I could be with y'all. That's always a lot more fun. Hopefully we'll get to do that sometime soon. This has been a strange year. I mean, Alan has done a great job of talking about how much Lincoln has done to react to all this. They did not offer employment law during a pandemic when I was in law school. So all this stuff is novel. We're trying to do the best we can and respond as quickly as we can. And it's not just the changing law nationally, but state to state and city to city ordinances and stuff that we're trying to address and keep up with and make sure that we are handling all the issues as they are coming in. And it's been a very overwhelming year. I'm sure it has been for y'all too, and very stressful in trying to manage the properties through all the changes and what you can count on and you can't count on from your employees. It's been really all my years the strangest and busiest year, and it's been stressful, and it's caused some stress in the workplace, and we're trying to address everybody's concerns. And Alan and I were talking about the other day, and they're just so fact specific as we deal with employees and deal with their different situations and how we can, help get through this process. And so I do want to compliment Lincoln, though, because I have, a lot of other clients, and of all my clients, Lincoln really stepped up to immediately respond, to give benefits that they were not required to give, to look at individual situations and try to help people who are having issues. And Lincoln's always been a great company for me to work for, but that's exactly the reason why. From safety issues to accommodation issues. And I've handled furloughs and layoffs, and, everyone cares, but I just think it's been really neat to see the way that they've stepped up and really responded during the situation. And now, I'm hopeful. I'm hoping we don't go back to working from home again like we did. We may. I don't know what's going to happen, but the last couple months we've been really focused on everyone returning to work, and kind of excited to get that going and trying to address individual situations. And Lincoln has been very considerate about trying to accommodate some people getting back, the children going back to school. And we've been trying to address some individual issues. And now I think we're primarily focused on just people who aren't returning to work by this time that have medical concerns. And we do have an accommodation process in place to review the facts related to people who are at risk and trying to work with them and help them feel comfortable getting back to work, in connection with just implementation of safety procedures to, trying to help them with their schedules or any risks that they're perceiving at the workplace. And we're starting to feel like we're getting everyone back. I hope this continues and we, aren't set back this winter. But again, we'll just have to address it as we can. We did put together a process. Alan, Trina, all of us got together and put together a process to go through for HR so that people can apply for an accommodation. And if they need medical certification, the certification forms, and we can kind of talk to them. If you have someone who has a medical issue that's asking to continue to work from home, let us know. And we kind of want to be involved, especially Alan as a focal point, because we want to make sure that we're being fair and consistently applying any accommodations that we're granting across the board, so that everyone is feeling the same. But that's where we are on so whatever area you're in, if you're in the Southwest, contact Heather. You know, so she knows the process. We've been doing it now for a couple months, but we're starting to see, at least we have seen, and hopefully, you know, nothing changes too drastically in the future coming up with numbers or our situation. Most of these people slowly, you know, coming back to work and the accommodation process really working. So, but a lot of work has gone into all the policies that Alan is talking about and all the processes that Lincoln has put in place. And so, it's been a lot of work, but it's been great helping you guys handle those. Alan?
Yeah, and thanks, Nancy. I appreciate that. And I'm trying to keep watch on the Zoom chat comments. And I see one of the comments and our questions is relative to our schools going to retract and close again and go online. I've seen that some are, and I think, and depending on the jurisdiction, some aren't. So, so I think it's incumbent upon us to be vigilant, to be diligent. We've got to monitor what's happening. And this is a great segue too to talk about, you know, the interplay between laws. We got federal law. The best example is the Fair Labor Standards Act, or FMLA, or ADA, Title VII. Those kind of things are all federal law. But we have state laws to talk about, and we have local laws, city laws. We have governors competing with either judges like in Dallas or mayors in Atlanta and other cities. So this is a peculiar time for sure, and where you've got everyone thinking that you've got the best mousetrap here. How do we in our community and or state or nation solve the riddle here? So I'm sorry I got off tangent there a little bit, but I want to again bring us back to focus in the sense of this is all encompassing, if you will, because we got to be mindful of what the federal law and folks are doing. The CDC, like it's a reg, not a law, but on the eviction moratorium, but has the force of law. So what we're doing on a national level, what we're doing on a state level, what we're doing on local levels. So to land the plane and answer the question about local schools, we need to know what in the accommodation process Nancy just talked about. We need to know what we're doing in each locality, whether it's, you know, from what our staffing schedule happens to be to what our schools or our cities are doing in the workplaces. What can we do? And that's how we have to know what is available, what options are available, or what requirements there are, so we can try and figure out what the best accommodation is. If we can accommodate, we will do everything we can to accommodate. Sometimes we can, sometimes we may not be able to, but then that leads to a consequence too. If we can't accommodate, what does the individual do? I mean, what would we have to do? So I appreciate the question. We'll have time, hopefully, for a few more questions at the end. I want to jump, at least talk for a moment in the interest of time on our second topic, which is, so we've just finished COVID and compliance and wage and hour compliance, because I want to address it quickly because it is trending. It's what we've been doing because, and we've got one more region, the Southwest, as far as training, but all the other regions that are on the call will know that we've embraced Dayforce for timekeeping, be it your desktop or on a voluntary basis, the Dayforce app on your mobile device. And we've rolled out training starting in California and the Midwest to the Northeast, to the Southeast. And I think the only group coming up next for training on how to do it is the Southwest. But in the best way of saying it, again, to make sure it's real and it's not abstract, why are we doing this? It's just it's with a time to use technology to our better advantage, and Dayforce is that technology of getting wage and hour compliance more correct, more timely, more accurate, going to real-time punches for starting and ending your shift, ending your meal periods. And again, each break in meal, or each state or some states have more peculiarities about that than others. So we have the federal law to talk about, which is the Fair Labor Standards Act, and we have local laws to be mindful of. But going to this change, if you have those questions, we can talk about more after the program if need be, is just embracing the technology that we have and making us more effective for compliance purposes. So that's the background behind that. But the policies that go with that we freshened are the time reporting. If you're a numbers person, that's 1231. SOP 1231 is our time reporting. How do we do that? Using now the Dayforce technology, the Dayforce desktop or the app on a voluntary basis. With that is the overtime policy, which is 1228. Because again, back to the history lesson. If you remember the Fair Labor Standards Act, it is from what era? If this is 2020, if we go back to 1930, in the 1930s, what was happening? The Great Depression, right? Law reacting to life. FDR and the New Deal did what? He did the National Labor Relations Act that allowed unionization. He also said we want to put people to work. The economy's in the tank. We need to put people to work. Let's have, create a law, a fair labor standard. Let's put them to work. Let's pay them at least a minimum wage and pay them for overtime. Right? So it's a history lesson. Was that a good thing or a bad thing? He thought what? If you penalize the employer by charging them time and a half for people to work overtime, what would the prudent employer do? The FDR thought he would hire more people and not have to pay the premium for overtime, right? How's that worked out 90 years later? It's still the law. And employer after employer kind of still doesn't like it, but it's minimum wage. And look how far we've gone in 90 years. Minimum wage now is what? $7.25 on a federal level. 90 years, $7.25. That's not, anyway, we don't have enough time to talk about that. But overtime, overtime after 40, it's still the law. So we revised the overtime policy. But if you have those questions, you get in. Here's what the language, as inartful as it happens to be, from 1936, the Fair Labor Standards Act. Workers get paid for all hours suffered or permitted to work. So suffered means if you work, or if we allow them to work, even if they shouldn't have worked overtime. That's what the law says. It said it in 1930s. It says it now. It's still the law. So we have to comply with that. So if you have other discrete questions about these things, happy to talk about them. We can do that offline. But keep that in mind. And then the service calls, policy 506, we adapted and revised that too, because it talked about on-call for our techs that are on call. And what's the difference between on-call, which is non-compensatory, versus when I answer the call, the clock starts, and I get called in, the clock starts. So we changed the word to make it be apply where it needed to apply. On being, again, on call is non-compensable. Answering a call or being called in, those are compensable times. So we freshened the language. If you have any anecdotal war stories to talk about in the interest of time, but maybe we're almost out of time, including my time, although I have all day, but I know y'all don't. So do we have a couple questions or any questions or one question we have time to answer?
We do have one question, Alan and Nancy.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to read it to you. It says, understanding the emerging trends on employment legislation by local, state, and federal entities, do you envision using local or regional legal resources to support our teams, or utilize a human resource director position in our admin offices to filter up to one central legal resource?
I can tell you that we've already been using local legal counsel. We've had to. I mean, we've got employees in a small area in Florida where we're having to keep up with ordinances. So, I mean, we've got, I think for local and, regional law and changes with respect to COVID, we've tried to keep up with those, and we use Littler. I mean, keeping up with, they have a staff of 25 attorneys, and that's all they do is keep up with what's going on with COVID nonstop. So, I mean, that's not even possible for us. I mean, I can't do it. So if you're concerned about legal compliance and all these different areas and all the different regulations and school issues and stuff, they are being kept up with on a local level as we address individual situations.
Yeah, I agree, Nancy. This takes a village. It takes a team. No matter how good any one of us happens to be as an individual, this is too big and complex in that sense, because it does. But as I'm sure most of you know, if not all of you know, We do the same thing on landlord tenant issues, to switch gears for a second. So we're in, almost 30 states where we have properties. So we use local counsel there when we need to. The same thing here on the employment space, because it's so particular from federal, state, and local cities, municipalities. So if you see something and hear something, then send it on. Make sure we're aware. We do our level best, and as Nancy said, we partner with Littler's got a national presence, but they've got folks doing nothing, tasked with doing nothing but monitoring city, state, and federal level laws, and especially in the COVID space. But no one's perfect. We're doing everything we possibly can. So if you have a question about something just happened, or again, back to the other question, if a Dallas school is closing or a Virginia school is closing, it's some things we may not know because they happen so fast. Then please share that if we need to know, if you think we need to know that. No question is a bad question. I'm not sure there's the saying that too much information, it can be overwhelming, but I'm not sure we can get enough, right? Because it happens so fast.
Okay, well, I think that we are at our time limit, but lots of comments and thank yous to you both in the chat. Everyone is very appreciative of your hard work and making it easy to follow and understand. And thank you all so much for your time.
Thank you all.
All right,
Have a great day.
thank you. All right.
Bye.
Bye.